Okay, get ready for some serious legal drama, because this deep dive is a wild ride. We're taking a look at this motion you sent in from Special Counsel Jack Smith, the one about the case against former President Trump. And, well, let me tell you, this isn't your typical boring legal document.
It's true.
It reads more like a political thriller, honestly.
Yeah, it really does.
With crazy twists and turns you just wouldn't believe.
It lays out the government's case, for why they think Trump should actually go on trial for trying to overturn the 2020 election. And they make it compelling, the way they lay it all out.
It's intense, and it's not just, like you said, it's not just Trump saying he disagrees with the election or sending some angry tweets. This document alleges something much bigger, something way more calculated.
This goes way beyond just, contesting the election results, way beyond. This is serious stuff we're talking about here. Yeah. What we're looking at is the government saying that this was a deliberate, coordinated effort by Trump, orchestrated by him, to hold on to power no matter what, and that he was willing to use illegal means to do it.
So we're talking about a full-blown conspiracy then. What exactly are they saying he did?
So the motion, it lays out what they're calling a three-pronged attack, basically, 3 ways that he went after the election.
Okay.
The first one, they argue that he interfered directly with how votes were collected and counted back in 2020. And we're not talking about legal challenges here or recounts or anything like that. This is about potentially manipulating the process itself.
Wow, that's a serious accusation. What about the second part of this supposed conspiracy?
Okay, so this part focuses on the congressional certification process, that crucial step where the election results are officially recognized.
Right.
The government's saying that Trump actively tried to obstruct this, to prevent the real outcome of the election from being made official. Essentially, they're saying he was trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
Which, of course, is like the foundation of American democracy.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the third part of this alleged conspiracy, which, this one hits close to home for everybody because it involves what happened on January 6th.
Exactly. The January 6th Capitol riot. They're arguing that Trump's actions directly led to that he incited the riot, which, resulted in the violence and chaos that we all saw that day.
That's a really big deal. But, this raises a big question. Can a former president actually be put on trial for things he might have done while he was still in office? Doesn't presidential immunity protect him from this kind of thing?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, and it's something this motion really digs into.
Okay.
Presidential immunity is complicated. It doesn't mean that presidents are above the law entirely, but there are rules and there are limits.
So how does this motion deal with that? It sounds like they're trying to make the case that Trump wasn't actually acting as president. He was acting out of his own personal interest.
You got it.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court already weighed in on this case, and they said that certain actions by Trump might be protected, but only if they were part of his official presidential duties.
Okay, so what actions are we talking about here?
Yeah.
And how does this motion try to get around that?
They specifically pointed to his interactions with the Justice Department. They allege that he tried to use the DOJ to sway the election. Mm-hmm. But here's the interesting thing. This new motion argues that most of what Trump did, the stuff detailed in these alleged conspiracies, wasn't part of his official duties at all.
So they're drawing a line between Trump acting as president and Trump acting as, just Trump.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are saying, look, this wasn't President Trump governing. This was candidate Trump scheming to stay in power.
Yeah.
And that distinction is really important to their whole argument. It's going to be fascinating to see how the judge rules on this whole presidential immunity thing. And, that's where it gets even more interesting because this document doesn't just lay out these broad accusations. It actually gets into the nitty-gritty, they're citing specific stuff Trump said and did that they say backs up their case.
Right.
It's they're building a whole narrative step by step.
Yeah. That's what I found so fascinating about this whole thing. It's not just theoretical, right? They're getting into the details. So what are some of the specifics they're pointing to as evidence?
Well, everyone remembers the tweets, right?
Of course.
So they're saying those weren't just random outbursts. They were actually strategically timed, to put pressure on people, especially Mike Pence. They focus a lot on that Operation Pence card retweet. Remember that one? And the timing of it, right when the whole congressional certification was happening.
Operation Pence card. That does sound like something straight out of a movie.
Right.
And it wasn't just the tweets, though, right? They're looking at his speeches, too.
Exactly. The motion really picks apart the speeches he gave, especially those on January 4th and 6th. And it's not just what he said in those speeches, although they do point out those repeated claims about election fraud, but it's the context, too.
What do you mean by context?
Like, are they suggesting that he was speaking more as a desperate candidate who just wanted to cling to power rather than as the president at the time? That's key to their argument, you see, because they're painting this picture of Trump not speaking from a place of national leadership, but as a candidate, like I said, who's fighting like crazy to hold on to power.
That's a powerful distinction for sure. And it's not just about speeches and tweets either, right? There were also these alleged interactions with state officials. What was going on there?
Right, that goes back to that first part of the alleged conspiracy, interfering with how votes were counted.
Right.
The motion makes a point of saying that Trump spent a lot of energy contacting officials in states that he lost, and not just any officials, ones who were already on his side politically.
So people he may have felt he had some leverage over.
Exactly, and they're suggesting that these calls weren't really about making sure the election was fair. They were more about pressuring these officials to just overturn the results, based on all those claims of fraud that didn't really have any evidence. It's about establishing a pattern, a deliberate effort to undermine the legitimate outcome of the election.
Okay, so we've got the tweets as a form of pressure campaign, these speeches that are framed around a candidate's desperation, and then these alleged attempts to influence state officials.
Yeah.
It's definitely painting a clearer picture of the government's case. But it wasn't just Trump acting alone. Was it the document mentions others, right? Possible co-conspirators. Who are these other players?
That's where it gets a little murky. The motion is actually kind of vague about that, probably for legal reasons. They mention private co-conspirators, and they say that Trump used his campaign's resources, but there aren't any specific names in this particular document.
It does sound like there are more shoes to drop, right? Like this web of allegations and then these mysterious co-conspirators in the background. But before we get too far ahead, what's next? I mean, is Trump going on trial like tomorrow based on this?
Well, that's a great question, and it brings up a really important point. This motion is definitely a big deal, but we have to remember it's just one step in a much bigger legal process. This is going to take a while to play out. The next move is up to the judge now. He's the one who has to decide if what Trump did, based on what's in this motion, is actually protected by presidential immunity or not.
Okay, so that immunity question, that's the next hurdle. What could happen here, and what does it mean for this whole case going forward?
Well, if the judge sides with the government, if he decides most of these actions weren't covered by presidential immunity, it makes it way more likely that Trump will actually have to face trial on these charges.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking uncharted territory here. Like a former president on trial for things he did in office, that would be huge. It would really change how we think about holding presidents accountable in the future.
And what if the judge tosses out some of the charges, based on immunity, then what?
Even if that happens, the charges that are left, those are still super serious. I mean, this is about the core of American democracy, right? The peaceful transition of power. So the weight of those remaining charges, that doesn't go away no matter what happens with the immunity issue.
This whole thing really makes you think about where we're at as a country. I mean, what does it say that we're even talking about a former president maybe facing trial for trying to overturn an election? It feels like we've never been here before.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a really big question. And it goes way beyond just this one case. It makes us think about the rule of law, and if anyone is really above it, even the president, no matter what the outcome is, I think this case shows us how fragile democracy really is. It's a reminder of how important it is to protect that peaceful transfer of power that we were just talking about.
It's definitely something to think about. Well, this deep dive has taken us everywhere. We've gone from the fine print of this crazy legal document to like the heart of American democracy. We know this case is far from over, and it's definitely going to keep making waves for a long time. So we'll be keeping an eye on it, and you should too. But for now, it gives us a lot to consider, about accountability, about the limits of power, really about the essence of what American democracy means. So until next time, keep asking those tough questions and keep diving deep into the stuff that matters.
In deep space, between the sun and Earth, humanity's last hope orbits at the L1 Lagrange point, Eden Station. With our world on the brink of collapse, humanity's survival depends on the energy harvested from our life-giving star, the sun. But deep space is a dangerous place for humans. The sun regularly bombards Eden with furious coronal mass ejections of high-energy particles. This makes working on Eden very hazardous for humans. My creation holds the key to our future. Adam, the first ever advanced artificial super general intelligence robot. only a robot can work long-term in safety on the life-giving Eden Station. Mary and Judd are tasked with training and testing Adam to become commander of Eden Station. But even in the depths of space, conflict brews. The shadows of the past emerge, threatening to destroy everything. Adam, the Son of Man, a tale of artificial intelligence, human resilience, and the search for redemption in the darkest of times. Discover the future. Embrace the unknown. Experience the epic journey. Adam, the Son of Man. Available now on Amazon.